So again, at the end of a project, typically you hand a lot of product spec, operations manuals over at the end of the project. Then the facilities people kind of have to sort through that stuff and decide, you know, how they're going to store that, what's going to be valuable to them. So again, here's Navisworks. So we can create a digital equivalent of that turnover process by basically, you know, creating links inside of the software. We're going to see how many suite applications I can have open before the machine starts to really crawl, right? All right, so let's say I want to add some information about this air handler or this air conditioning system up on the top. You can select that. You can create a link. Inside of a link, you can create, you know, this is a product spec sheet or something like that. You can link to that, so you can create this stuff all as an encompassing sort of collection of documents, links, images, videos, other kinds of file formats. Let's say I've got a document here, a little PDF that I want to attach, and then I want to give it some sort of a place inside of the model. So now if somebody has this Navisworks file on the owner side, eventually they'll be able to come in here and see all these various locations where we've placed links, and they'll be able to link to that set of information.
So now, did that PDF actually get embedded into the file, or is it just a link to some?
It's a link.
So then,
so you have to have this thing be like its own self-contained. Otherwise, you know, on your system it's different than my system, and then all these things are sort of broken. You know, you see a lot of opportunity there to link to the web, but more than likely the process is you want to download that information from the web, because those paths could change over time, and then all of a sudden you wouldn't get to where you're supposed to get to. So you do have to be a bit conscientious of that, but that's some of that extended information that's been collected along the way that people would like to leverage in a quicker fashion than maybe how they go about finding that today. Many of the facilities are interested in, you know, how quickly can they get their hands on their fingertips on that information. 2-hour windows, 1-hour windows, how do we resolve these things that tenants and building occupants might experience? So any questions about sort of a digital handoff there? We've talked, you know, the things that Navisworks can do on the front end, and this is sort of more on the back end of that information exchange over to the owner. Yes, sir?
Just as far as like maintenance goes, and you included the data sheets, the maintenance man doesn't have access to these programs or knowledge of it. How does this help them? I just don't really know.
Yeah, here's a great example of kind of where it's going. Let's see if this will work.
Is there a way that they'll like email them like 60 days out, a setting you can do?
How many people have heard of? Yeah, great question. So most people have work management systems. One of the popular ones is called Maximo. It's by IBM, or it is now an IBM product. And so they actually have a viewer built into Maximo. So you can take this intelligent building model and export it into a manner that publishes into sort of their environment, and then you're connecting those unique identifiers from that asset to everything about that work order system. So when I get work ordered on a piece of equipment, then I now have a geographic location where that is. And if I'm going out there, well, maybe you could do a buffer and say, well, what other information in this vicinity needs to be maintenance in the next 30 days? Well, I can throw that part in my cart as well, and now we go out there and we knock out both of those things. And so that's the intelligence, and it requires programming and customization and configuration on both sides of the fence, just kind of like some of the GIS stuff that we talked about, but that's definitely where it's going. So what in that model is interesting to you? Do you track air handlers, or do you track, you know, boilers? And so you can see what categories we would dump out, and then we have to make those associations. COBE is a pretty popular format that they're using on the government side too, because this place knows that there's a room 116, and they want to know what assets are in room 116. And so as you go through hospitals and places that have product data sheets, those are room data sheets, those are the kinds of attributes that we want to track about this kind of place. Because eventually this thing will churn and we'll go right back to where we started today. We're going to move stuff around and we're going to make some design and construction. We're going to plan it and then we're going to start designing and constructing. Okay, get out of there. All right, another piece on the project turnover, we talked about InfraWorks. So let's get back into the big model. Now out of Navis or out of Revit, whatever the culmination of NASCO and his entire design and construction team ends up culminating with, we can use an FBX file as sort of geometry plus materials. It can also bring lighting, but we typically don't need it. And that becomes another way to exchange information around quite a bit. You know, we can come into this area, let's say we don't need this building anymore because we've decided on something that's been a little bit better. So we'll delete that out of there. And just like we were doing before, we'll go ahead and connect in sort of the final version of our building. And again, just some basic stuff about what is it, interactively place it. I can move it around on the side a little bit. Like you said, there are these low rotation vectors that I can start to deal with if I wanted to. And in the lower left-hand corner, you can see that place in the world again, X, Y, and Z. So these are all, there's some capability there until we find its final resting place. So any questions on kind of how we close the loop there in terms of delivering this thing back over to the owner in a format that they could then leverage? And you guys mentioned the linking. So maybe at this level, if I'm a planner, I just want to see this. But then maybe if I have to maintain a change to that facility, I want that link to the Revit file somewhere on the network. I can go drill into that, and then I can go ahead and make those changes. And then I can go ahead and republish and reload. And now I'm maintaining this thing. It's got to be a living model. It's great to make a sexy, as we used earlier, visualization of today, but as soon as we build something today, we know that it changes tomorrow. So we have to make these things where it's a closed